I'm El Charisse, and this is Speaking Tongues. But not in the studio, not over Zoom. This is Speaking Tongues in person. In this episode, I'm meeting with Laura, musician and artist who carries a piece of her family's soul, her grandfather Sebastiano Puglia's poetry, written in Sicilian, some of it dating back to the 1940s. We talk about what it means to be the keeper of her grandfather's words, the steward of his poetry, about how these poems were traditionally sung in their ancestral town of Limina, and what it means for her as a woman to reimagine the traditional form typically reserved for men. So tell me a bit about how your connection is to the language and to Sicily and to Sicilian culture.
I was born in Connecticut, but my parents were born in Sicily. And both of them, so all four of my grandparents spoke primarily Sicilian. They spoke Italian, but really like the only way to communicate with them was through Sicilian dialect. So I kind of grew up around Sicilian, but then also around Spanish, because I grew up in San Juan until the age of 13. You know, the presence of language was an important part of my upbringing, and so my interest in Sicilian really came from my family.
You had this connection to Sicilian through your grandparents. Did they actively teach you Sicilian language?
It was never this moment of like, I'm giving you a Sicilian lesson, but there were moments throughout where maybe I'd pronounce something and they would say, oh no, this is how you say it. Like there's the word idu. Idu, yeah, which you said really well. I did, yeah. But like it's actually it's hard to say for a lot of people, and I definitely have a memory of like, this is actually my uncle kind of going around a group of younger people and saying, well, can you say idu? Can you say idu? And we were all kind of repeating it like idu, idu. So yeah, there was that sort of very kind of mindful attempt to make sure that the Sicilian that we were speaking was kind reflective of who we were.
Right.
Yeah.
And idu means?
Him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, idu, ida.
Ida.
Yeah,
Idu,
you got it.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a bit about the artistic expression that you've noticed in Sicily, and what a bit about that tradition is like poetry, and you said you typed up your grandfather's poetry.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that tradition.
Yeah, so I think, the kind of poetry that my grandfather wrote were these very specific like sonnets. And so like Sicilian poetry from like the 13th century, scholars have, some scholars argue that that school of poetry invented the sonnet and invented this idea of using like the vernacular in literature, which is like such a big thing.
Yeah.
And then, I think a lot of people also talk about how Dante's Italian became the sort of standard Italian, but it could have also very easily, like possibly, if it had gone the other way, we would all be speaking Sicilian. Right. And it was through that same mechanism of like taking the vernacular and putting it in poetry. But the poetry that I like heard and watched my grandfather and others kind of create as a kid it's a very specific form, and it's like a very tight rhyme, and they would call them, or we still call them canzoni, which is like song.
Yeah.
So it's like this line between poetry and music. But in like the 1940s and before, in small town Sicily, if a boy liked a girl, he would go to the town poet and ask for a poem to be written about her. And then he would call his friends, and someone would come with an accordion, and they would like sing this song.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, outside like the house.
Oh my gosh.
So that's how my grandfather started writing poems. Like he was not,
He was the town poet.
He wasn't the town poet.
Okay.
So our town poet was a man named Bizeffi, and he was, he did not know how to read or write.
Okay.
But so it was all through this oral tradition. He wrote these incredible poems, and he helped my grandfather write a poem about my grandmother. And then of course, like my grandfather started writing more and more and more, and became really prolific and published 2 books and all of that. But yeah, like it sort of came from that kind of tradition, and I just love it because, you know, my grandfather had a 5th grade education. He didn't really consider himself like a literary person, but he did consider himself a poet.
Yeah.
And he, you know, and he participated in that.
I'm stuck on there's a town poet.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let this go. I'm sorry. He would compose these poems. Would he compose? Oh my God, I have so many questions. Wait. He would compose the words and the music, right?
Well, it's a good question. The music was always the same. It's like
yes.
it's a very repetitive melody.
Okay.
And it's interesting because when you watch people and you hear them sing the canzuna, the lyric doesn't really follow, like the melody drives the lyric in a way. And so sometimes they're saying something with the wrong emphasis because that's what the melody is doing.
Okay.
So it's not like, you know, if you were to write a song, the lyrics and the melody kind of are happening together.
Okay.
But in Sicilian, it's like, or in this practice of the canzuna, it follows that pattern, and it's a very strict pattern. And so you're kind of like, you force the words into the melody.
Right. So you have been working with your grandfather's poetry for such a long time. Tell us a bit about his work and
so he started writing after he met my grandmother, so that was in 1944, and then he wrote poems until like the day before he passed away at 93.
Oh,
so in terms of his, like what his poems were about, he wrote a lot about immigration, so his experience of being away from Sicily. He wrote a lot about his faith and sort of these like big ideas about the world, and like, you know, like big questions about life and death. And he wrote about sports. He loved soccer.
Oh,
so he has like a whole, so many soccer poems. And he wrote a lot about like Sicily. You know, he had this poem that he wrote about the 9 provinces. It was like this giant poem, and each province had its own, you know, a couple stanzas. And he was really proud of that poem. Like I remember he told me once he had given it to his friends who were also Sicilian, not from our town. And he was like, they want a copy because they're going to frame it. And he was just really like, you know, particularly proud of certain poems. But yeah, he, you know, as he got older, he wrote a lot of poems about growing old. And of course, I forgot my favorite poems of his love poems.
Oh.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of love poems to my grandmother.
Yeah.
Because he left to work in Venezuela for a few years. And so he wrote poems to her, and she actually wrote a few in response to him.
How wonderful. Poems?
Poems, yeah, like in that same sort of like sonnet form. Yeah.
That's so precious. That's so. What was the typical, I want to say meter, but what was in that tradition that he was writing? What was the standard?
So it's usually, I would say, about it's about 10 lines, and then it's A, B, A, B, A, B.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So you've got to find like a good A, B pair, because you're stuck with it for the whole rest of the poem. As someone who's like tried to write in this form, and that's not my general artistic kind of approach. I do better in a lot of like more fluid structures, and it's a beautiful challenge to try to write one of these. But yeah, you have to get those. You got to really like those 2 sounds, because they're gonna keep you company the whole way.
Do you not only have this connection with your grandfather as an artist, as a poet, as a writer, as his grandchild, but now you have this expression, this poetic expression in your life, and you're singing these poems. What does that mean for you as a woman to be, you know, in your era and be able to express these words of your grandfathers that you wouldn't have been singing 80 years ago?
I think I feel a lot of pride. I feel a lot of gratitude. I think there's something really beautiful about being able to kind of look at words that somebody wrote and then hearing them through your actual voice and what kind of meaning does emerge, what kind of meaning emerges from hearing it through you. It's funny, I think you're just making me think of, it is primarily males who make these poems, at least in that traditional way. And there are Sicilian women songwriters, prominent ones, especially through the 70s. But when I had my first big heartbreak as a 20-something, I think I was 22, and I was just shattered. And my grandfather was the only one who could console me. I would go to my grandparents' house and I just kind of felt better. And one day, we were just sitting at the kitchen table, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna tell you this canzuna, it's 100 years old. And he recites this canzuna, and as he's reciting it, I'm realizing that it's from the perspective of a woman. Oh. And I mean, I could tell it to you right now because I know it by heart. It is literally the worst. It is the most biting breakup poem you will ever hear. But I've been trying to figure out who wrote this. Was this a man writing it from the perspective of a woman? Was it a woman who put it out there, and maybe that's why there's no name attached to it? Was it really 100 years old? Did he write it just so that I could feel consoled in some way? And this is all an imaginary beautiful thing that a grandparent did for a child. Because I was in Sicily doing research for something else, and I would ask people, scholars of this work, what, this field, do you know? And they would all say, I have no idea what this is, but I agree with you with your interpretation that this is a woman speaking. Yeah. And so it's always been this mystery to me. Yeah.
Well, what did she say?
She said, okay, so should I translate it for you, or do you want me to say it first?
Give me the Sicilian.
Okay.
I will get about 20% of it, okay. And then we can translate.
All right. It goes, arrasso, non voglio più spasso, non voglio più amicizia gottia. Como scarola d'un fasciai ammazzo, e como restatini de budia. Io sogno lo meglio in talomazzo, e onore ci farò la toinia, io sogno bedda, più bedda me faccio, de chi non predicaio più cottia. And that, it starts where she says, get away from me, I don't want to have your friendship anymore. So like scarola, which is escarole, I tied you up in a a bouquet, but I sort of I've tied you up. E como restatini di putia, just sort of the remnants from a little shop, the stuff that people no longer would like to have. E como restatini di putia. Io sogno lo meglio in tanto. So this one is I am the best flower in the entire bouquet. E onore ci farò la toinia, and I will do honor to your, and this last word, I don't quite know what it is. I've asked many people what it is, and sort of people have thought, well, maybe it means I will do honor to your, your kind, to another man someday, or I will do honor to your family somehow. So maybe this was someone who was married and then got cheated on or something. We don't know. Oh my gosh. And then, I know, it's so dramatic. Do you see what I mean? The intensity,
yes.
You can hear it in the language.
Yeah.
It's the softness, but then there's this real intensity.
Right.
And you see that in the Sicilian flavors and the Sicilian landscape and features of someone who looks Sicilian. It's there's an intensity to it. But, and then the last part goes, io sogno bella, which is a word I hope you heard in Sicily, which bella means beautiful.
Yes.
In the feminine. So it's io sogno bella, più bella me faccio, and I'm getting even more beautiful the more I don't hang out with you.
need this written and
right?
framed.
I'll write it for you.
This is amazing.
But like, it's, you know, for him to tell me this is 100 years old,
Yeah.
right? So like, here I am thinking like, those women who lived back then don't know what this is like, and they had no modes of expression, and they were, you know, so oppressed, and but like, here's this poem of this person who's writing like such a powerful thing in a form that is like really, really constricting.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so glad your grandfather shared that with
I know.
you. Like, how did that help you in that moment? Like,
Oh my gosh.
What were you able to?
I mean, I wrote it in an email and I sent it to him.
Kidding. In Sicilian?
In Sicilian.
I love it.
And then that was just so absurd and silly. But yeah, I think I obviously come back to that. It's, you know, any resonant artwork has that sort of that feeling of the person who wrote it, and you feel empowered by that. It's like what I feel when I read, you know, other poets. Like, I don't know why I'm thinking of some of Maya Angelou's poems that have that same kind of like, I am powerful, I am beautiful, there's nothing you can do to me.
Self-affirming.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like so directly self-affirming.
Yeah, and that's great to even hear that from a woman 100 years ago. Self-affirming and not just lamenting or wooing. And I think that says so much.
Yeah.
And now, like you, it makes me wonder how many other women were out there writing, and maybe we haven't heard their work, we haven't seen their artistry, and that's so man, that's so powerful.
I know. And I have it's like a personal like mission in my soul that like I will try to find out more about that story. Right. Like, who is that person, and how did my grandfather even like know that poem, and what happened there? You know, it's my dream to find out.
I want to get to the bottom of that.
I know.
After Laura taught me a few lines from one of the poems, careful to pause to let me catch the syllabic meter, we sat down at her piano. There was no sheet music, just her intuition, her artistry, and her instinct. A little bit of guesswork and a whole lot of heart.
I feel like I'm kind of like the custodian of a lot of, definitely of the poems that my grandfather wrote, because he like very clearly told me that one day.
Yeah.
But just of this kind of knowledge about something and this experience of it. And so I think when I think about how I might want to share it, it's always this, I'm still in an experimental phase of trying to sort out how would I do that. You know, part of me thinks like maybe it's just like sneaking this little thing into something that then becomes like a whole other song.
Right. Do you want to sing something while you're playing?
This piano is way out of tune.
Okay.
For anybody watching. And for you, I'm sorry. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel like old out of tune pianos are charming in their own way.
Yeah.
So here's the thing to know. If you're thinking about what it's traditionally sounds like, it won't sound like the way I sing it. So, you know, it's usually a group of people, or maybe even one person with an accordion, and then like projecting over that like bellowing sound of an accordion. So it's definitely like a much louder, more declaratory voice than you probably will hear me.
Yeah.
But if we were to sing the lines that you learned, it would sound maybe like let's see, I'm trying to remember our Viragi Gomattia. So it would go like this. So the line is Viragi Gomattia non c'è nessuna, right? That's like the cadence of it. But in the song, since you have to fit the melody, it would sound like this. Viragi Gomattia c'è nessuna.
Okay.
And then it would continue. Da, 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 da.
Wow.
Da, 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 da. It does feel like a lullaby.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank Thank you.
It's great to, we talked about it, and it's just great to hear it, through you. And it's so great to hear it come to life and have some music with that too.
Aww.
So thank you so much for sharing your family, sharing your story, and your musical talents. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was really great.
Yeah. This conversation reminds me that heritage and language are intertwined. It isn't always loud. Sometimes it's tucked away in notebooks. It's the poem written for the person you love, a verse sung at the kitchen sink, the sound of a language that only gets spoken on Sunday mornings or in quiet corners of memory. Laura honors her grandfather's legacy with more than just his words. And that's what Speaking Tongues is always about. The language we use to connect, to create, to carry something forward, to remember where we're from, and to share our cultures with others. Thank you so much for watching. My guest today was Laura Ricciardi. Speaking Tongues is written and hosted by me, El Charisse, and this episode was produced by Ernie Zahn from Senato. Learn more about their work and support this show by clicking the links in the description.